It is great to have John here with me today. John and I were two of six, but when I was 6 and he was 8, we were just 4 then, I think, kids. And my parents packed us up and moved to Kenya to be missionaries for a year. And it was a great adventure, time to explore, and we ran around. We lived on the what is that? The Rift Valley. So I'm not even sure what the edge that comes into the valley is, but on the slope of the Great Rift Valley. And this morning I told a story about one of our adventures, but I want to tell another one now, at risk of telling all my stories. I won't tell everything. But we did run around and we got into all sorts of fun trouble. One day we were walking back from the lower part of the town, and we came across this thing that looked like a brown snake. And it looked brown because it was so dusty. We actually didn't even know what the true color of it was. And John decided it was a great idea to figure out how to pick it up. For some reason, that was like our goal, was to be able to pick up snakes. I was never as bold, or maybe smarter. But all I did, I just ran up and touched it, and then ran home. But John kept on trying, and then very shortly, a Kenyan man came running up, screaming at him, and the only thing I think John could understand was black mamba, the second most deadliest snake in the world. So we would have been some very frozen, stricken children if we had not gotten lucky that day. We certainly hoped that it wasn't going to bite us when we were trying to poke it or pick it up. But that's not the type of hope that we're going to be talking about today. The type of hope that we're talking about today is a hope beyond hope. It's a hope that comes when hope ends. When any logical person might say that there is no hope, there's nothing can be changed, things are so intractable, that's where this type of hope kicks in. Hope, I think, is only second to love as the most hallmarkized word in our culture that has lost every sense of depth so that we use it mainly just to say we hope it doesn't rain. But what we're talking about today is especially when we come under the grips of a system that continues to come down on us, of racism, materialism, and war that prizes things over people, and even worse, can make people into things. And it seems generational, it seems intractable. In face of these disasters that we've seen, that maybe we've poisoned Mother Earth too far and too much to even repair it. That's where this hope kicks in on this All Saints Sunday. So let us pray. Ever-loving Creator God, we give you thanks for bringing us here today, for handpicking each person in the pews and online to experience worship together. Teach us, God, as we open our hearts. Enter in now. May we be open to your word. Now may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our Lord, our rock, our liberator, and our redeemer. Amen. I want to do something a little weird now, is to tell a story, and it's not going to flow, but you're going to just take this story and put it in your back pocket, and you're just going to make sure it's there for the next 17 minutes and 12 seconds that my sermon is. And this story comes from mythologist Michael Meade, but it really comes from a culture that's 5,000 years old in New Guinea. And it's, this story actually, I get so many stories in my head. This story actually comes from East Africa, and it's one told by elders about lions. And something that happens with lions when they get old is they lose their teeth, and they lose their ability to hunt and be very productive in the hunt. But they don't get rid of the old lions because they also, when they lose their teeth, their roar gets even louder and more menacing. And so in their cleverness, they figured out how to use the elder lions. They would the pack would send the lion behind a bush in the savannah where all the gazelles and zebra and what have you are in the middle, and then send the hunting pack around the other side, and then make the elder lion roar as loud as he can. And of course, the gazelles and all of them would run right into the mouths of the honey pack. And the elders would say that the moral of the story is to run towards the roar. To run towards the roar. So just take that, put it in the back pocket. And there's a lot of stories that I have today. It's All Saints Sunday, which is a difficult time for many of us, where we remember those who have died in the past year. Certainly, this congregation has had more than its share of deaths over the past year. And mothers, siblings, loved ones. And so it's not an easy time to be here. So I'm grateful for everyone sitting with us and working through this with me as well. But I wanted on this All Saints Sunday to tell about three of the saints in my life who I think of now, who have gone on to glory, but have a big impact still in anchoring me in hope, in that sure and steadfast anchor of the soul that John read earlier. First one is Ms. Marion Cheek Jackson, who is on the screen, who was born in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I met her about 10 years ago this fall. She was 82 by the time I met her. She had already been a historian for 50 years, which there's something to that. You can be talking about history for that much history. For a historian of the church, St. Joseph CME Church. And she was an amazing woman, had a wonderful career in many different ways. And she also brought me into the Church of St. Joseph. She was soft as steel. She taught me how to cuss without even using a curse word. She would never say the name of the person. She would just say, "That's a mean somebody. That's a mean somebody." I said, "Oh, okay." Ouch. Don't want to be on Mrs. Jackson's bad side. She died in the same house that she was born in 92 years ago, a house that was built by her grandfather, who was a former slave from Chatham County, who came to Chapel Hill, built that house, and also built the university's walls. Her father was a labor organizer in the 40s in the South, creating the first janitorial association. When I moved to New York, it was a little more difficult to stay in touch because all I had was the phone, which wasn't ideal because her hearing was almost completely gone towards the end. And so I would be walking around Manhattan literally screaming into the phone and people looking at me, who is this crazy guy yelling at this poor old lady, just screaming and screaming, trying to say something, to have a conversation. And eventually one day she got really fed up, and just was ready to get off the phone. And she couldn't understand what I was saying, and so she says, love you too. Bye. And I was like, okay, love you too. And we hadn't said love you before. But I thought that was really something special, that when in doubt, assume you're loved, and then give it back. Assume you're loved and give it back. She's one of the anchors of my hope. When I met Mrs. Jackson at the church that we both went to, that she was a member of for 92 years, was pastored at that time by Reverend Troy F. Harrison, who was also an amazing human being. He had a smile that lit up the room, a laugh that could change a circumstance. There's something that was a magical laugh that could actually change things all around, change your reality. He had 5 kids. He was from Low Country, South Carolina. He worked a second job at 4 o'clock. Someone's from Low Country. Red Hots. I visited there and learned what Red Hots are. And he brought his 5 kids with him. He had a second job as a newspaper delivery person. But still had all the time for his members and to do justice work as well. He stuck his neck out in many occasions doing the justice work. He had a heart attack and died on May 2nd at the age of 53 this year, 2 months after preaching Mrs. Jackson's funeral. He had a heart attack while he was on the phone telling a joke. He was telling one of those old Southern jokes that's really long, And it's not really about the punchline. It's really about the performance of it. And I got a chance to hear the joke. I'm not sorry, but it won't even do it justice. But I called his nephew, who he was on the phone with that day in May, and got to hear the joke, and I could just hear his laugh. He could laugh at some of the stupidest stuff for a long time. And when I think of Reverend Harrison, sometimes I would be angry because he was so young, 53 with 5 kids, his youngest still in high school. There was plenty of work still to be done. And he always had an idea of something else to do, a new project, a new movement, a new organizing tactic, that the work was not finished. But in preparing the sermon, I remembered also something he said a lot, which was that the reward for good work is more work. The reward for good work is more work, and many of you know that is to be true. And when I think about that, and I think about what Reverend Harrison is still doing, that since Jesus is the author and the finisher, since God is the perfecter of the faith, that our work doesn't even end here on earth when we aren't here in bodies, but that Reverend Harrison's good work is being multiplied in this communion of saints that we share. The last saint and anchor of my hope that I wanted to share about is my godmother, Sue Henry, who was born in Rosedale, Mississippi, in the Deep South in 1930. And my family's not originally from the South, well, circuitously maybe, but she really became our grandmother. I can't even remember who officially was her godmother, but we all just, I guess, dumped our other ones and chose her as our godmother. She never married. She never had kids. She lived an amazing life. I can remember actually being in Kenya, reading we had a book that showed up about the elephants of Kenya, and we opened it, and it was dedicated to a teacher in Memphis, I think, her high school English teacher from 1950-something. And it turned out to be Sue, who she hadn't seen in 50 years. When I gave my graduation speech from high school, which went way too long, and talked about the school board, which was sitting right there, and so I got yelled at quite a bit right afterwards. Called them out for resegregating the schools and not talking about LGBT and all this stuff. So they didn't like it, and got real touchy about it. And so I did feel pretty bad afterwards. And I remember that Sue came. And just with a simple word, when I told them what happened, she says, "Oh, Lord." And I was like, yeah, that's right. That's right. It's over. What are y'all worried about? She had that way. But like Reverend Harrison Hershey, my wife never got to meet her. And that hurts sometimes too. But even Hershey will tell you that she knows Sue. Every morning when we say goodbye, we say what Sue said, which is have a good day and give a good day. Every morning, Sue is with us in this communion of saints. When Sue was on her deathbed, I got a chance to go see her, which was a great blessing that not everyone gets. And I've somehow finagled my way into a time when she wasn't with anyone else, and I asked her to pray for me because I knew she had some good prayers. And she prayed with one foot on the other side, it felt like. And she prayed that I would never become careless or indifferent. Careless or indifferent. And I don't know about anyone else here, but some of the things that hurt me the most are times when I've been careless and indifferent to people. So that prayer has stuck with me as well. These three saints are some of the anchors of my faith, anchors of my hope that are anchored in a higher place, the sure and steadfast anchor of the soul. And in some respects, the two texts that we read today don't really mesh. The first one, we have an anchor of the soul. Sure and Cephas, anchor of the soul. And the other one, we're running a race. And I don't know if you can imagine trying to run a race with an anchor stuck to you, but it doesn't seem like it'd be very efficient. So there's something about these two texts that really encapsulate something that Hebrews is trying to do, which is a completely unique text in the Bible. Some of you all have been a part of the Bible study for these past few weeks, where we've had a lot of fun digging underneath some of these beautiful scriptures that, when we get them in context, are a little trickier and more confusing. Sue, you got me all messed up everywhere. Let me fix this. But to understand some of the context of this is that the Hebrews writer is talking to a people who are in crisis, like much of the New Testament, people who are experiencing great suffering. And not only experiencing suffering in their generation, but remembering a suffering from a previous generation that gets referenced often. And so something about generational trauma and generational suffering that makes it seem so intractable, so impossible to excavate and undo, that can be a great assault on the soul. Those are the people that perhaps the author of Hebrews is writing to. Odette, who came, she's pushed me on my patriarchy with that one. But that something so offensive and troubling and scarring that you might even lose hope, that you might lose the faith, lose the confessions. And so the preacher, it's really a sermon, is begging the people to hold fast to their confessions, to hold fast to this hope, this anchoring of the soul. But it's not just to be anchored and to be some sort of safe. It's not so that for some hyper-spiritual purpose. It's actually anchoring so that you can wander. Being anchored so that you can run this race of faith. Being anchored in something so that you are not leashed but unleashed when we get anchored in God. There's no sentimentality at all in the suffering. There's no sentimentality when Jesus is running the race, when they say that, it says that Jesus in the NRSV disregards the shame. And actually, I don't know why the NRSV changes it from old time, because this actually means Jesus despises the shame. That there's nothing glorified or wonderful about the cross in itself. That we don't have to spend any time, maybe I'm not saved or Christian enough, but I can't be overjoyed every time something bad happens. Maybe one day I will be. But I don't think that that's necessarily what we're called to be, is to be that level of sanctified and not rustled at all by the world. Jesus actually calls us into that pain. And there's something wild about the human spirit and about the story of Jesus, that Jesus actually meets us in our pain more often than in our triumphs. Sandy, can I tell the story? So Sandy, at one point during the Bible study, Hebrews is often used actually in a very anti-Semitic way. And so we were really struggling to not do that, to see what was underneath it. And Sandy popped up one day and just to explain it for us. And she said that growing up Jewish in the foster system in New York City, I always thought of Jesus as an orphan. That Jesus met Sandy where she was, a Jewish orphan in New York City, transposed by 2 millennia, still being able to connect. And that's what Jesus does, is that Jesus doesn't ask us to come to God with everything worked out, with everything finished, with everything looking nice, that actually anything that we finish or we try perfect, here we have author and finisher. In our text today, it's pioneer and perfecter. Anything that we try to perfect won't be perfect. It won't be finished. Our work is never finished. And so on this All Saints Sunday, I want to leave with you as you come forward. We're going to be doing communion. We are going to be enacting the very thing that we talk about in Scripture on this Communion Sunday, where we partake in the wine and the bread, where we say yes to this communal partnership with the cosmic companionship in our pilgrim journey. We remember that you assume you are loved and give that love back to the world. The reward for good work is more work. Let us never be careless or indifferent. Have a good day and give a good day. And you remember that story I told at the beginning. Bring it back out of your pocket. They should run towards the roar. And in so running, we may find some liberation. We don't have to let pain and suffering dominate, as we said, but we know for sure that the best way to find trouble is to run away from it. Best way to find pain is to run away from it. That the roar is the scariest thing in the whole world. It's one of the things that messes us up the most, making us rethink our whole lives and relationships, because the roar is God's everlasting love. Amazing, overflowing love that will not let us go. A love that is eternal, divine. A love that knows the circle will be unbroken by and by. Lord, by and by. It's a hope of things eternal. A sure and steadfast anchor of the soul on this pilgrim journey. Let us run. Amen.